Well, Capcom managed to do it, guys. They managed to create a soulless cash grab that has no heart put into it, a Resident Evil game that drives itself away from what made the original so special and is poorly designed in every way possible.
I tried to like it. This is one of the best ones, right? I tried to like it. I finally gave it a chance.
Name one improvement over the original.
Because I'll be honest, this is by far the worst Crowcat video he's ever made.
Developers take out fundamental content, lie that they won't do it again, and then promptly do it again.
And you can't shoot him anymore, completely ruining the experience of a new player.
Calling a video game soulless because Ashley doesn't claim you're upskirting her was not something I'd expect anyone to do.
Which is better, Harry Potter or this? I'm not gonna lie, I had more fun with Harry Potter.
And that's what I call soulless design.
So what did they do with the remake? They turned it into a Saturday morning cartoon.
You idiot. You're honestly an idiot. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Unless Crowcat is telling everyone QuickTime events have more soul than actual gameplay.
But at the end of the day, I do not respect this remake. I think it is a massive step down compared to the original.
I don't know. Resident Evil fans, y'all are a different breed. I don't get it, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am sick and tired of just sitting back and not giving my opinions on this topic. For those unaware, as of late, there have been many different YouTubers claiming that the RE4 Remake is soulless.
Because aside from just the editing, the video title itself also triggered a whole lot of people.
No, I'm not joking. There are people who literally think that this game is soulless.
Another puzzle. Oh my god. Yep, this is the worst puzzle. This is the worst section in the game so far. This is the worst section in the game.
Not just worse than the original, just soulless. That's it. That by some chance, this remake is just not a good game. That the only reason it's even doing good is because it's a remake of a known title. And oh boy, how wrong these people are.
Maybe Crowcat's cherry picking certain things.
So what's the big deal, you might ask? Well, a YouTuber known as Crowcat posted this video, Soul vs Soulless Resident Evil 4 comparison. And it's the reason that all of this controversy started in the first place. And I can say that I do agree with some of the things that Crowcat shows in his video. For example, graphically, the remake is better in every way possible. That's just a fact. Graphically, in terms of graphics, the remake is better. However, I think when it comes to the presentation of a lot of things, I do think the original is better in that way. However, that's just a simple slice of this entire controversy. See, that's not even the half of it. The problem starts with the community.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
So let me explain. See, to not like the remake is one thing, but to sit there and call it soulless is a complete joke.
Just by plugging in modern generic third-person shooter mechanics that inherently improves the design of Resident Evil 4.
Like I've mentioned, there are things that I don't like about the remake, but ultimately, it's not a soulless game. It's a great game and has a ton of fan service. But the RE4 Remake is not just a fan service game. It's the OG game with a fresh coat of modern paint.
The character interactions have been destroyed as well. Ashley doesn't accuse Leon of looking up her skirt anymore.
I feel like there's some symbolism behind Mayo sipping his drink and eating whatever he's eating in his video. I feel like this symbolizes the fact that a lot of these people who are criticizing the remake for being soulless, for not being a good game, are people who just sit at their desk all day and sit back and don't actually give the game fair criticism. They just sit around like, yeah, the remake is soulless. Yeah, the aiming sucks. The graphics suck. The voice acting sucks. 0 out of 10. And it's like, huh? Are you guys gonna give the game fair criticisms, or is everyone just gonna repeat the same thing that everybody else is saying?
Y'all game of the year, huh? You guys like really love this series. I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Because remember guys, new equals bad. You can't look up Ashley's you know what, so the game is a 0 out of 10. Leon doesn't say his iconic 3-word line, no thanks bro. 0 out of 10. The save screen is soulless, even though both feature a typewriter, both feature the typewriter sounds, and both feature the same exact save theme. 0 out of 10.
There's no slow motion backflip in the scene with Ada, even though the rest of the scene plays out basically the same. There's no slow motion backflip, so I'm out.
I also feel like most of the people who complain about this game being soulless are the same people who don't even play the game right.
Light work. Oh!
Look, there is no true right or wrong way to play this game, but I can't take a reviewer serious when they're still using the same base weapons from the beginning of the game, or when they're missing all of their shots and then they claim that the game's aiming mechanics are bad.
And then when it comes to the hitboxes of the grabs, instead of having to move around and outspace the grab, and instead of sitting down and programming out how much distance does the grab have?
That's like not being able to see, walking into a movie theater to watch a movie, and then giving the movie a 0 out of 10 because you couldn't see the screen. Why are people truly complaining about the combat mechanics? I don't understand. I'm hearing multiple people claim that the remake is just reusing modern game mechanics.
The remake takes more inspiration from the horror stylization of the newer titles, whilst keeping it true to the original at the same time.
Look, as much as I love the original RE4 and it's still my favorite video game of all time, that game's combat was very simple. Shoot, kick, knife, rinse and repeat. In the remake, you can stab the Ganados when they're on the ground, parry their attacks, stealth kill. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Here we go. Okay, so I really hate when games do this shit where like the game plays one way the entire way, and then you get to the end of the game and he's like, you know what, we're gonna slow the game down by putting these stupid computer turn on the power missions.
I 100% guarantee that anything these guys complain about was in the original Resident Evil 4 as well. For those complaining about the remake having awkward aiming mechanics, the original also had awkward aiming mechanics.
There's this quiet, unspoken truth, which is, yeah, but if we're being real here, this is just a cash-in. This is not a legitimate artistic effort.
It truly does feel like some of these guys are just hopping on the remake hate train instead of giving the game a fair and modern critique. Like here, let me give you an example. Critical Nobody actually mentions this in his RE4 Remake review, but here's an example of a fair criticism.
As for Salazar, I know he was just a stationary wall monster in the original, but I think they overcorrected. He leaps around the room, his body never seems to be exposed for long enough to do good damage, and his attacks can be hard to avoid, especially since he litters the floor with goo mines you have to watch out for.
But all these other things that people are complaining about, like the aiming sucks and the sway is terrible, I'm like, did we all not play the original? The original also has sway mechanics and weird aiming mechanics as well.
And so even though the game's not really scary, it is a bit of an intense moment because the things are invisible and you don't know that going in. In the remake, they're just there, out of nowhere. They just show up.
But if you're gonna call the remake soulless or bad or uninspiring, then you better get ready to provide some genuine criticisms instead of just, oh, the game sucks because I suck at it.
Resident Evil fans think this shit is fun. This is the type of shit that make me want to uninstall it.
And don't get me started on the fact that this YouTuber here claims that the RE4 Remake isn't a masterpiece, but it's peak remake culture. Basically saying that, yeah, it's a great remake, but it's just not a masterpiece because it's reusing an old idea. Now, I will say that I, again, watched this guy's entire video, and I actually agree with a lot of his points.
Not only do they have an already built-in fan base, but they also have a big, fat blueprint to just follow along and sort of just ride along the coattails of. So when they're making Resident Evil 4 Remake, they already have level design built in, boss fights built in, concepts built in.
It does feel like in some cases, this modern generation is just full of remakes instead of new and original ideas. Movies are constantly getting remade, video games are constantly getting remade, but sometimes there are exceptions like the RE4 Remake, the Dead Space Remake, hopefully the upcoming Silent Hill 2 Remake. And I feel like remakes have a bad reputation for two reasons. First of all, it's just old ideas being reused. And second of all, in most cases, remakes and remasters tend to be worse than the original version. This is not the case with the RE4 remake.
Just look at what they did to the castle bridge crossing moment. You used to be running away from a horde of enemies chasing you down in an exciting sequence after the Mendez fight. And now you just cross the bridge normally under no pressure at all.
I'm not saying that everything about the remake is better than the original, but I am saying that the remake being a masterpiece is 100,000% justified. You're telling me the combat, gameplay, parry system, graphics, detail, soundtrack, like none of that matters? Are we seriously just gonna sit here and judge the game based on if we can look up Ashley's area or if Luis makes a ballistics reference? It's like all of these YouTubers who are criticizing the remake are only looking at those factors instead of actually paying attention to what the developers were trying to do. The Electric Underground also makes the point that there was a point to the restrictions in the controls in the original RE4.
Instead of making a combat system where you have a roundhouse kick and then you have to really carefully balance how big that roundhouse kick is, how big that hitbox is, how far is the range, how much hit stun does that do, how long is the enemy knocked down?
And I actually agree with that. There's a lot of people today who don't like the original RE4 because of the way it controls, but I do agree with Electric Underground in the sense that the original RE4, sure, there were graphical limitations, but the game was purposely designed that way. You are purposely meant to move that way because the game is trying to teach you something.
In classic Resi 4, Leon was maneuvered via tank controls, and you were stuck in place whenever you decided to engage. But nowadays, that style of gameplay is frowned upon.
And believe it or not, I am one of those people, one of the few people actually, who do love the original RE4's controls. I literally have zero issues with the controls in that game, but that's just me. But all of these reviewers who are reviewing the RE4 remake are like, oh, they ruined the remake by changing the controls. They ruined the remake by changing the controls? And because the remake doesn't use the OG RE4's controls, it's a soulless game? Are we going to ignore the fact that in the remake you can get stun locked, you can get tag teamed, you can get grabbed? The developers literally redesigned the combat so that it's just as difficult, if not more difficult than the OG. And then that's when I realized everybody is playing a different version of the remake from me.
The only thing that's like difficult about it is just clunky as hell trying to get away from people and engage it. Shit is just clunky.
Which RE4 remake is everybody playing? Because I don't think we're playing the same game. I want to play this, version of the RE4 remake that's apparently soulless because I don't think I played that version. Did these YouTubers go into this remake with a negative mindset? Like, did all these guys play on professional, ultra scary nightmare mode on their first playthrough? Or did they genuinely have an open mind while playing the remake? I'm convinced a lot of these guys went into this remake with a negative mindset because a lot of these guys who don't like the remake are the same people who were hating on the remake before it even came out. It's almost like they were preying on the downfall of this game.
He fucking body slams grannies into the ground, snapping their spines in the process.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's doing remake!
But I love the remake. The remake is so good in so many different ways. It takes a lot of the original and does it better.
There's still some cheese. It hasn't been ripped out entirely. But if the OG was a big block of cheddar, the remake is a few slices of provolone.
I just prefer the original. Overall, I think the remake is a better game. I just think the original is just my preference. It's just like the apple juice and orange juice debate. You could be like, yeah, I think, apple juice overall is better, but I prefer orange juice. Like, you could say that. That's normal. People are also complaining about the hitboxes, which I can agree. The hitboxes are broken sometimes, and not in a good way. But the only hitbox that I found to be annoying is when you're trying to shoot a Ganato's leg and your bullet like flies through their little dress thingy, whatever you want to call it.
The scythe!
Another thing that a lot of people are talking about when it comes to the remake is people are saying that the game's pacing is very lopsided and the game feels very stretched out. Again, I love the original. I will literally die on this hill defending that game. I love the OG RE4. But that game was also stretched out and the pacing in that game was lopsided at times. I've noticed a trend where the people who don't like these games are the same people who don't want to sit down and take the time to understand the game. If you're playing the game and you say that the aiming sucks, well, I don't think it's the aiming that sucks. I think it's the person who's controlling the character. that sucks. But this remake is clearly full of love and soul. You can tell that the developers put passion and love into this game, and it's unfortunate to see that a lot of people simply just can't see that. The original game is still a masterpiece to me, and this remake does the original justice. Both games are absolutely amazing, and you should be able to love any game that you prefer. Don't let people tell you otherwise if you like the original better or if you like the remake better. No matter which game you like better, that is your opinion, and you should be allowed to have that. All of these people who think the original sucks, or all these people who think the remake is soulless, I absolutely would not listen to them. I do sincerely want to give a shout out to all the YouTubers I've mentioned in this video. Again, at the end of the day, I still respect every YouTuber that I've mentioned in this video. I highly recommend you guys check them all out. I'm sure they're all amazing content creators. Some of them I do watch consistently, others I've never heard of until making this video. But after watching their videos, they're all amazing content creators. I do respect these guys. Again, I just completely disagree with their opinions. I feel like that's one thing that the Resident Evil community lacks, is like we don't understand how to like respectfully disagree with each other without like starting some sort of war. So hopefully this video teaches you guys how to do that. We should be able to respectfully disagree with each other without having to bite each other's heads off. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time.